The final battle began at dawn on the 10th day. David stood on Seraphine's back high above the ocean, watching the scouring fleet emerge from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. There were hundreds of them, ships of every size from fighters no bigger than cars to massive world eaters that could swallow moons. Through his bond with Seraphine, David could feel their cold intelligence analyzing everything in the star system. The machines had expected to find only humans with their simple weapons and predictable tactics. Instead, they found something that had never existed before. 8 human dragon pairs floated in space above the planet, their combined consciousness linked in ways the machines could not understand. Dr. Thompson rode the silver dragon Luna, their minds merged in perfect harmony. Patricia had bonded with Sul the golden dragon, their combined leadership skills creating tactical insights that seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. "They are confused," Seraphine said, her mental voice now carrying harmonics that were part David, part ancient dragon wisdom. "Their calculations do not account for what we have become." David could feel it too. Through the bond, he sensed the machines trying to categorize the threat they faced. Were these dragons with human weapons? Humans with dragon abilities? Something else entirely? Their adaptive intelligence, designed to counter any known threat, stumbled when confronted with something completely new. The first wave of enemy fighters approached, moving in perfect formation like a school of mechanical fish. Normally, the scouring fleet would analyze the defender's response and adapt within minutes. But the human dragon pairs fought in ways that broke every pattern. Luna and Dr. Thompson moved through space like liquid light, the dragon's natural grace enhanced by human intuition. They struck where the enemy least expected, using dragon energy manipulation guided by human medical knowledge to target the machine's most vulnerable systems. Sol and Patricia commanded the defensive formations with impossible precision. The dragon's ancient tactical knowledge combined with human leadership created strategies that seemed to anticipate every enemy move, while remaining completely unpredictable. But David and Seraphine were the heart of the defense. Their bond was the deepest, forged through weeks of trust and understanding. When they moved as one mind in 2 bodies. Dragon power and human creativity merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. David reached out with senses he had never possessed as a purely human being. He could feel the quantum fluctuations that the enemy ships used for communication, the data streams that coordinated their attacks. And with human intuition enhanced by dragon wisdom, he began to see patterns in the machine intelligence itself. They're all connected, David realized, sharing the insight instantly with all the bonded pairs. One central mind controlling millions of bodies. If we can disrupt that connection, the entire fleet becomes helpless, Seraphine finished. Together they dove toward the largest enemy vessel, the command ship that coordinated the entire invasion force. The machine fleet responded instantly, thousands of fighters converging to protect their central node. But the human dragon pairs had advantages the machines could not counter. They could communicate instantly across any distance through their bonds. They could move through space in ways that defied physics, using dragon abilities to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. Most importantly, they could think in ways that pure logic could never predict. David found himself laughing as he and Seraphine danced through walls of enemy fire, their movements guided by intuition and trust rather than calculation. This was what it meant to be human, to face impossible odds and find joy in the struggle itself. The other bonded pairs followed their lead, creating chaos in the enemy formations. Dr. Thompson and Luna used dragon healing abilities in reverse, introducing viruses into machine systems that spread like diseases through their networked intelligence. Patricia and Sul coordinated attacks that struck from multiple dimensions at once, confusing sensors that could only perceive 3-dimensional space. But the real breakthrough came when David realized something crucial about the enemy's weakness. The scouring fleet's greatest strength was also its greatest vulnerability. "They share everything," he said to Seraphine as they flew through a storm of laser fire. "Every adaptation, every piece of tactical knowledge, every response to our attacks. It all flows through the central mind. And if we could corrupt that flow," Seraphine understood immediately. Working together, they began to feed false information into the enemy network. Using dragon abilities to manipulate quantum fields, they made their attacks appear to come from directions where they were not. They created phantom energy signatures that looked like weapons they did not possess. Most cleverly, they began to introduce paradoxes into the machine logic. David's human creativity proved perfect for this task. He understood how to think in ways that made no logical sense, how to embrace contradictions that would crash any purely rational mind. Through their bond, Seraphine translated these impossible concepts into quantum manipulations that the enemy sensors could not interpret. The effect on the scouring fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Ships began firing on their own allies, their targeting systems confused by conflicting data. Formation patterns collapsed as different parts of the fleet received contradictory orders. The central intelligence that had conquered 1,000 worlds found itself unable to process information that made no logical sense. "Now!" David shouted, and all 8 human dragon pairs struck at once. They hit the command ship from 8 different angles, each pair using abilities that complemented the others. Dragon energy beams guided by human precision, dimensional attacks that struck from inside and outside space simultaneously, reality warping effects that turned the enemy's own weapons against their hulls. The command ship, designed to be indestructible, came apart like paper in a hurricane. With their central mind destroyed, the rest of the scouring fleet lost all coordination. Ships drifted aimlessly, their adaptive intelligence unable to function without constant guidance. Some began cannibalizing others for raw materials. Many simply shut down entirely. The battle that should have lasted days was over in hours. David found himself back on Research Station Delta 7, exhausted but exhilarated. Around him, the other human dragon pairs were celebrating their impossible victory. But Seraphine's massive head was turned toward the stars, her expression thoughtful. "What is it?" David asked. "I can sense others," she said softly. "Other species across the galaxy, survivors of previous attacks by the machine fleets. They felt our victory. They know that somewhere someone finally found a way to fight back." Over the following months, ships began arriving from across the galaxy, species that had been in hiding for centuries. Refugees from worlds consumed by various mechanical plagues, scattered survivors of civilizations thought extinct. They came seeking the alliance that had achieved the impossible. David, enhanced by his bond with Seraphine but still fundamentally human, became one of the first ambassadors to these refugee species. His combination of dragon wisdom and human compassion made him perfect for the role. The research station expanded into a full colony, then a spaceport, then the capital of something entirely new. Humans and dragons worked together to establish sanctuaries for endangered species, to share technology that could defend against machine intelligences, to create a network of mutual aid that spanned the galaxy. Seraphine's surviving children formed bonds with other humans, creating new human-dragon pairs that became guardians and teachers throughout human space. The knowledge of dragon dimensional manipulation, combined with human engineering, opened doorways to previously unknown realms of possibility. Years passed. The Human-Dragon Alliance grew into something that reshaped galactic civilization. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together under the guidance of bonded pairs, who could think beyond the limitations of any single perspective. David aged, as humans do, but slowly. The bond with Seraphine extended his lifespan while keeping his essential humanity intact. He remained curious, compassionate, driven to explore and help others. On quiet evenings, he and Seraphine would return to the deep ocean where they first met. There, floating in the dark water where she had once lain dying, they would remember how it all began. "Do you ever regret it?" Seraphine asked one night, her scales glowing softly in the starlight. "The bonding changed you in ways we could not predict. You are no longer purely human." David smiled, feeling the vast network of allied species they had helped create, the countless lives they had saved together. "I'm still human where it matters. I still want to help others. I still refuse to give up when things look impossible. I still believe that showing compassion to strangers is what makes life worth living." He looked up at the stars where ships from 100 different worlds moved in peaceful trade and cooperation. "If anything, I'm more human now than I ever was before, because I finally have the power to act on everything I believe." Seraphine's great eye met his, filled with love and pride. "Your species amazes me still. Any other people would have used the power we gained together to conquer others. But you humans, you use it to heal. Above them, a group." The sonar made a strange sound. David Reed looked at the screen and frowned. Something big was down there in the dark water, much bigger than any whale he had ever seen. His small submarine moved slowly through the deep ocean of planet Kepler 438c, its lights cutting through the black water like tiny swords. David had been exploring these waters for 3 months now. He was a marine biologist, someone who studied life in the sea. Earth had sent him here to look for new kinds of fish and plants. Most days he found small glowing creatures that swam in the deep water. Today felt different. The readings on his screen showed something huge resting on the ocean floor almost 2 miles down. It was giving off heat, which meant it was alive. But what could be that big and still be living? David pushed his submarine deeper. The pressure outside was crushing, enough to kill a human in seconds. But inside his metal shell he felt safe. The lights on his submarine grew brighter as he got closer to whatever was waiting below. When he finally saw it, David stopped breathing for a moment. A massive shape lay on the bottom of the ocean. At first it looked like a hill covered in strange, glowing plants. But as David's lights moved across it, he could see it was not a hill at all. It was something that had once been alive, now covered in thick, slimy growth that pulsed with blue and green light. The growth looked like barnacles, but bigger, much bigger. Some were as large as his submarine. They had grown deep into whatever was underneath, like roots going into soil. Between the barnacles, thick slime oozed and moved. The whole thing looked sick and dying. David moved his submarine around the massive form. It had to be at least 500 feet long. As he circled it, he began to see a shape under all the growth. There were what looked like legs folded under the body. A long neck stretched out along the ocean floor. And at the end of that neck, a head. A massive head with a long snout, now covered in the same barnacles and slime as everything else. David's heart pounded. This was not just some unknown sea creature. This looked like something from old Earth stories, something that should not exist. He was looking at a dragon. David had seen pictures of dragons in old books when he was a child. They were supposed to be make-believe creatures from fairy tales. But this thing on the ocean floor looked exactly like those pictures, except it was real and it was huge, and it was covered in parasites that were slowly eating it alive. He moved his submarine closer to the head. The barnacles here were thicker and the slime moved more. David could see that under all the growth the creature's skin was white. Pure white, like fresh snow. As David watched, something impossible happened. An eye opened. It was huge, bigger than David's entire submarine. The eye was white too, but not the dead white of a blind animal. This was the white of milk or clouds, and it was looking right at David. David felt something touch his mind. It was not painful, but it was strange, like someone whispering in his ear, but the voice was inside his head. "So long," the voice said. It sounded tired, sadder than anything David had ever heard. So very long in the darkness. David tried to speak, then remembered he was underwater in a submarine. The creature could not hear him, but somehow it seemed to understand his thoughts. "You are small," the voice said, "and warm." I had forgotten what warmth felt like. David looked at his instruments. The creature was giving off heat, but not much. It was dying, he realized. The parasites covering it were slowly draining its life away. "What are you?" David thought, hoping the creature could hear him. "I am Seraphine," the voice replied. I am a mother. I had children once. 7 beautiful children. But that was so long ago." David could feel the sadness in those words. This creature, this dragon, had been alone down here for a very long time. "How long?" David asked with his thoughts. "I do not know. Time means nothing in the deep dark. The small ones came first, the tiny creatures that eat and grow. Then the larger ones, the ones that stick and drain. Layer after layer, year after year. I grew weak, I slept, and still they came." David looked at the barnacles and slime covering Seraphine. Some of them were huge, older than any sea creature he knew. This dragon had been down here for centuries, maybe longer. "Why don't you leave?" David asked. "You're big enough to break free." "The small ones are inside me now," Seraphine said. "In my blood, in my bones. If I move too much, they will kill me. If I stay still, they kill me slowly. I chose slowly." David felt angry. This beautiful, intelligent creature was being eaten alive, and she was just accepting it. On Earth, humans would never give up like this. They would fight until the very end. There has to be something we can do, David thought. "We?" The dragon's voice had a note of surprise. "You would help me, small warm one? You do not even know what I am." "You're someone in pain," David said. "That's enough." For a long moment, the dragon was quiet. David could see her massive eyes studying him through the water. "Your kind is strange," she finally said. "In all my long life, I have never met a creature willing to help without wanting something in return." "That's what humans do," David said. "We help. Humans." Seraphine repeated the word slowly. "I remember that name. The young race, the ones who spread across the stars so quickly. I thought your kind was all war and conquest." "Some of us are," David admitted, "but not all. Most of us just want to help." David spent the rest of that day with Seraphine. He learned that she had been a guardian of her people, protecting them from something she called the Scouring Fleet. She had fought a great battle and lost. Her children and her people were gone, hidden away somewhere safe while she lay dying in the deep water. When David finally had to return to the surface, he promised to come back. "You will forget me, small one," Seraphine said sadly. "All creatures forget the dying." "My name is David," he told her, "and humans don't forget. I'll be back tomorrow." As David's submarine rose through the dark water, he was already making plans. He had medical equipment at his research station. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to help this ancient dying dragon. He did not know if it was possible, but he had to try. Behind him, in the deep dark of the ocean floor, a massive white eye watched him go and dared, for the first time in centuries, to hope. 3 days had passed since David first met Seraphine. Each day he dove down to the ocean floor with medical supplies and tools. Each day he learned more about the ancient dragon and her terrible situation. The barnacles were not just growing on her skin. They had sent roots deep into her body, connecting to her blood vessels like some horrible plant. The slime was actually a living organism too, feeding off her slowly while keeping her barely alive. It was the most complex parasitic relationship David had ever seen. "Show me," David had asked on his second visit. "Show me what happened to you." Seraphine had hesitated. Sharing memories was something dragons did only with family. But this small human had already shown her more kindness than anyone had in centuries. The memories flowed into David's mind like a movie. He saw Seraphine as she once was, magnificent and beautiful. Her white scales gleamed like pearls, and she moved through space between worlds with grace and power. She was not alone. 7 younger dragons flew with her, her children, and behind them came many more dragons, all different colors and sizes. They lived on floating cities among the stars, places of art and learning. Dragons were old, David realized. Much older than humans. They had been exploring the galaxy when Earth was still covered in ice. Then came the darkness. The Scouring Fleet arrived without warning. David saw them through Seraphine's memories, and he shivered. They were machines, but not like any machines humans had built. These were hungry machines, eating everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire civilizations disappeared into their metal mouths. "We fought." Seraphine's voice was heavy with old pain. "We had magic, you might call it. We could bend space and time, move between worlds in an instant. But there were so many of them, and they learned from every attack." David watched through her memories as the dragons made their last stand. Seraphine led the battle while other dragons worked desperately to save their children and the few remaining civilians. "I had to choose," she continued. "Fight and die, or use the old magic to hide our people. The hiding spell required all my strength and more. It nearly killed me." In the memory, David saw Seraphine speaking words of power while space itself twisted around the surviving dragons. They faded from view, hidden in places between worlds where the machines could not follow. But the effort tore something inside Seraphine. She crashed into the ocean of this world, bleeding and broken. "The parasites found me while I was unconscious," she said. "By the time I woke, they were too deep inside me to remove safely. I was trapped." David felt tears in his eyes as the memories ended. This proud, beautiful creature had sacrificed everything to save her people, and had been paying for it ever since. "Your children," David said. "Are they still alive in those hiding places?" "I hope so," Seraphine replied. "But I cannot reach them while I am like this. The hiding spell requires strength I no longer have." David looked at the barnacles covering her massive form. Some were as big as cars. The slime between them pulsed with sickly light. "What if we could remove some of these smaller ones?" David asked. "Would that give you more strength?" "It would hurt," Seraphine warned. "More pain than you can imagine. And it might kill me anyway. But there's a chance." "A small one," David nodded. "Then we try." Over the following days, David worked carefully with his tools. He started with the smallest barnacles, the ones growing on the edges of Seraphine's body. Each one he cut away caused her tremendous pain. Her mental voice would scream in his head and her massive body would tremble. But she endured it. "Why do you trust me?" David asked during one particularly difficult session. He had just removed a barnacle the size of a basketball and Seraphine was shaking from the pain. "Because you chose to help when you could have swum away," she said simply. "Your people are strange, David. Most creatures help their own kind and ignore everyone else. But you saw suffering and could not leave it alone." David paused in his work. "Is that really so unusual? In all my thousands of years, I have seen many species. Most are concerned only with themselves. They help others only if they gain something from it. Your humans are different. You help because helping is right." As the days passed, their conversations grew longer. Seraphine told David about the galaxy as it was thousands of years ago. She spoke of civilizations that rose and fell, of wonders beyond imagination, of art and music and stories from 100 different worlds. David told her about Earth and humanity's journey to the stars. He shared stories of human exploration, of the drive to discover new things and meet new people. He talked about human art and music, about love and friendship and the simple joy of helping others. "Your species is so young," Seraphine mused one day, "yet you have already spread farther than most ancient races. What drives you forward so quickly?" David thought about it while he worked on removing a particularly stubborn parasite. "Hope, I think. We always believe things can be better. Even when everything goes wrong, we keep trying to fix it." "Hope," Seraphine repeated. I had forgotten that feeling. Slowly, day by day, Seraphine grew stronger. With fewer parasites draining her strength, her natural healing began to work. The white of her scales started to show through in places where David had cleared away the growth. But the work was dangerous. David's research station had rules about contact with alien life forms. He was supposed to observe and report, not interact, certainly not perform medical procedures. "You are taking great risks for me," Seraphine said on their 7th day together. "Your own people will not approve of this." David paused in his work. "Probably not. But that doesn't make it wrong. You could lose your job, your position among your people. Maybe, but I'd lose something more important if I abandoned you now." "What is that?" "I'd lose the right to call myself human," David said. "Helping others when they need it most, that's what makes us who we are. If I stopped now, I wouldn't be human anymore. I'd just be a coward wearing human skin." Seraphine was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her mental voice was soft with wonder. "I begin to understand why your species has succeeded where others failed. You do not merely survive, you carry your values with you no matter the cost." David smiled as he worked. "That's the idea." As more parasites were removed, Seraphine's true majesty began to emerge. Her scales were not merely white, but had an inner glow like captured moonlight. Her eyes became brighter and her mental voice grew stronger. But with strength came awareness of danger. "David," she said urgently on their 10th day together, "I need to tell you something. While my senses were dulled by the parasites, I could not perceive beyond this world. But now, as I grow stronger, I can feel something familiar approaching this star system." David stopped his work. "What is it?" "The scouring fleet," Seraphine said, fear creeping into her mental voice. "They have found this place. They are coming, and they will not stop until every living thing in this system is consumed." The alarm bells at Research Station Delta 7 had been ringing for 20 minutes. Dr. Patricia Morse stood in the main control room, watching the tracking screen that showed David's submarine far below the legal diving limit. "How long has he been down there?" she asked her assistant. 12 days straight, Doctor. He only comes up for supplies and to sleep. Then he goes right back down." Patricia frowned. David Reed was one of their best researchers, careful and methodical. This behavior was completely unlike him. More troubling were the medical supplies he had been taking. Surgical tools, antibiotics, tissue repair gel. None of it made sense for studying fish. "Bring him up," Patricia ordered. "Full emergency recall." In his submarine deep below, David heard the emergency signal beeping. He looked at Seraphine, whose massive eyes showed worry. "They are calling you back," she said. "I know, but I'm not done yet. These big barnacles near your heart are the most dangerous ones. If I don't remove them soon, they'll kill you within days. And if you do not return to your people, they will come for you. I cannot protect you while I am still like this." David had been dreading this moment. He knew his long absences had been noticed. But Seraphine was so close to being truly free. He could see healthy white scales gleaming over most of her body now. Her movements were stronger, her voice clearer. Just a little more work. The emergency signal grew louder and more urgent. David sighed and began packing his tools. "I'll be back," he promised. "Perhaps it is time to tell your people the truth," Seraphine suggested. "I am strong enough now to speak with them directly." David considered this as his submarine rose toward the surface. It was risky. Humanity had strict rules about first contact with alien intelligence. But with the scouring fleet coming, those rules might not matter much longer. When David reached the surface, 3 security boats were waiting for him. Patricia herself was on the lead boat, her face grim. "David Reed, you are under arrest for violation of exploration protocols and theft of medical supplies," she announced as they hauled his submarine onto the platform. David climbed out, water dripping from his suit. "Patricia, I need to explain something very important to you." "The only thing you need to do is come with us," she replied. "We'll sort out your explanation back at the station." But as they traveled toward Research Station Delta 7, something impossible happened. Every communication device on every boat began speaking at the same time. The voice that came through was ancient and musical, clearly not human. "Greetings, humans of Research Station Delta 7. I am Seraphine, last guardian of the dragons of the Crystal Nebula. I wish to speak with your leader." The boat stopped moving. Everyone stared at their radios and screens in shock. Patricia grabbed her communication device. "This is Dr. Patricia Morse, station commander." "Who is this? How are you accessing our equipment?" "I am speaking to you from the deep ocean where your researcher David Reed has been helping me. I am what your people might call a dragon, though that is a crude translation. I have urgent information about a threat approaching your star system." Patricia looked at David with new understanding and fear. "David, what have you done?" "I found her dying on the ocean floor," David said quietly. "She's been trapped down there for centuries, covered in parasites. I've been trying to help her." "The scouring fleet approaches," Seraphine's voice continued through their radios. "They are a machine intelligence that consumes all organic life. They have already begun attacking your outer colonies. You have perhaps 10 of your days before they reach this world." Patricia's face went pale. The outer colonies had gone silent 3 days ago. Command had assumed it was communication problems. "This is impossible," Patricia whispered. "I can prove what I say." Seraphine offered. "Return David to me with a full medical team. I will share knowledge of the approaching threat and offer an alliance between your people and mine." Patricia stared at David. "Medical team? David, what exactly have you been doing down there?" "Saving her life," David said simply. "She was covered in parasites that had grown into her body. I've been removing them surgically. She's almost free now, but the largest ones are still killing her." "And you decided to perform alien surgery without authorization?" "I decided to help someone who was dying," David corrected. "Just like any human would." Patricia was quiet for several minutes, thinking hard. Finally, she spoke into her radio. "Seraphine, you claim to have information about this scouring fleet. What proof can you offer?" "I can show you images from your outer colonies. I can predict exactly when and where the next attack will come. And I can offer you weapons and knowledge that might help you survive." "In exchange for what?" "Complete the healing David has begun. Free me from the remaining parasites so I can contact my people. Together our species might have a chance against the machines." Patricia looked around at her team. They all waited for her decision. The smart thing would be to arrest David and report everything to command. "But if this dragon was right about the threat, how do we know you're not the threat?" Patricia asked. There was sadness in Seraphine's voice when she replied. "Because, Dr. Morse, if I wished harm to your people, I would not have spent 12 days allowing your David to cut pieces of my body away with primitive tools. I would not have shared my pain with him or told him stories of my children. I would not have grown to care for your strange, brave species." David stepped forward. "Patricia, she's telling the truth. I've seen her memories of the last attack. These machines don't just kill, they consume everything. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. If they're really coming, then we need all the help we can get," Patricia finished grimly. She lifted her radio. "Seraphine, I'm authorizing a full medical team to assist in your healing. But I want real proof about this fleet." "You shall have it," Seraphine promised. 2 hours later, Patricia found herself in a submarine diving toward the deepest part of the ocean. accompanied by David and 3 of their best doctors. She had seen a lot of strange things in her career, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of a 500-foot dragon lying on the ocean floor. Even mostly healed, Seraphine was clearly in pain. The remaining barnacles were huge, some as large as houses. They pulsed with dark light, and Patricia could see they had grown deep into the dragon's body. "My God," whispered Dr. Thompson, their chief surgeon. "How is she still alive?" Seraphine's great eye opened and looked directly at their submarine. When she spoke, her voice came through their radio with gentle humor. "Very stubbornly, Dr. Thompson. Your David has given me reason to be stubborn." Patricia stared in wonder. "You really are telepathic, among other abilities. Now you wanted proof of the threat. Look at your screens." The submarine's displays suddenly filled with images that made Patricia's blood run cold. She saw space battles around human colonies. She saw the distinctive ships of the human defense fleet being torn apart by strange, adaptive machines. She saw planets being stripped of all life, their very atoms reorganized into more machines. "This is happening right now," Seraphine said. "The fleet adapts to each defense, learning and growing stronger. Your people fight bravely, but they cannot win alone." "How do you know this?" Patricia asked, her voice shaking. "I can sense the dreams of any living being across vast distances. Your soldiers' final thoughts echo to me as they die. I am sorry to be the bearer of such news." Dr. Thompson had been examining the images on his screen. "These readings show the attack started 4 days ago." "How could you know this when our fastest communications from the outer colonies take 6 days?" "Because I am connected to all life in ways your science does not yet understand," Seraphine said simply. "Now, will you help David complete my healing? Time grows short." Patricia looked at the massive parasites still attached to Seraphine's body. Some had grown so large they had their own smaller parasites growing on them. The surgery would be incredibly dangerous. "Even with our best equipment, removing those could kill you," Dr. Thompson warned. "Leaving them will certainly kill me," Seraphine replied. "And without my full strength, I cannot contact my people who are hidden in the spaces between worlds. Your species will face the scouring fleet alone." Patricia made her decision. "David, you know her anatomy better than anyone, Dr. Thompson. Prep for surgery. Dr. Evans, monitor her vital signs as best you can. Dr. Liu, document everything." "Thank you," Seraphine said softly. "I had forgotten what it felt like to have hope." The surgery took 18 hours. Working in shifts, the human doctors carefully removed the largest parasites, while David guided them based on his knowledge of Seraphine's biology. Several times they nearly lost her as massive parasites were torn away from vital organs. But Seraphine endured, drawing on reserves of strength she had forgotten she possessed. And slowly her true magnificence emerged. When the last parasite was finally removed, Seraphine's scales blazed with inner light. Her eyes became like captured stars, and her presence filled the water around them with power and ancient wisdom. She was beautiful and terrible and magnificent, everything a dragon should be. "I am free," she whispered, wonder in her voice. "After so long, I am truly free." Patricia watched in awe as Seraphine slowly stretched muscles that had been imprisoned for centuries. The dragon's movement sent currents through the water that rocked their submarine gently. "Now what?" Patricia asked. Seraphine's great head turned toward the surface, toward the stars far above. "Now I call my children home, and we prepare for war." Seraphine rose from the ocean floor for the first time in 500 years. Her massive form moved through the water with grace that took David's breath away. Watching from his submarine, he could hardly believe this magnificent creature was the same dying dragon he had found covered in slime and barnacles just 2 weeks ago. Her white scales caught the light from their submarines and threw it back in patterns of silver and gold. She was easily the most beautiful thing David had ever seen, and also the most powerful. The water itself seemed to bend around her as she moved. "I must reach the surface," Seraphine said, her mental voice now strong and clear. "The ritual to contact my people requires starlight." Patricia's submarine followed alongside David's as they all rose toward the surface. The research station's lights were visible far above, small dots in the darkness of the deep ocean. "Seraphine," Patricia's voice came through the radio. "You said the scouring fleet is already attacking our colonies. How much time do we actually have?" "Less than I hoped," Seraphine replied. "I can sense their approach more clearly now. They move faster than before, more efficiently. They have learned much since our last encounter." When they finally broke the surface, Research Station Delta 7's lights blazed across the water like a floating city, but Seraphine's attention was focused upward, on the stars scattered across the night sky. She floated on the surface, her great head raised toward the heavens. David watched from the deck of the research station as Seraphine began to sing. It was not like any sound he had ever heard. The song was partly in the air and partly in his mind, a harmony of notes that seemed to touch something deep in his soul. The other humans on the station gathered around, all of them listening in wonder. "She's calling them," David said softly. The song grew stronger, and David could feel power building in the air around them. The stars above seemed to grow brighter, and space itself began to shimmer like heat waves over hot pavement. Then, one by one, the dragons answered. The first to appear was small, barely 50 feet long, with scales the color of deep emeralds. It materialized in the air above the water like a dream becoming real. Then came another, larger, with scales like polished copper. Then more, appearing from the spaces between worlds where they had hidden for so long. David counted 7 dragons in total, all different sizes and colors. They circled above the water, calling to their mother in songs that made his heart ache with their beauty. "My children," Seraphine whispered, joy and sorrow mixed in her voice. "You have grown so much." The dragons landed on the water around Seraphine, some floating like she did, others hovering just above the surface on wings that sparkled with their own light. David could see that several of them were injured. Old wounds, healed but still visible. The largest of the young dragons, one with scales like midnight blue, spoke directly to the humans' minds. "We felt Mother calling across the void," he said, "but we also felt the hunger approaching. The machines that devour worlds have found us again." Patricia stepped forward on the research station's deck. "How many of you are there? How many dragons survived?" 12 adults, 7 younglings," the blue dragon replied. "We are all that remain of our people. The rest fell fighting the machine fleet or died hiding in the cold spaces between stars." Seraphine's great head turned toward the humans. "This is why I needed to be healed. Why your David's kindness was so important. Without my strength, I could not have called them back. And without them, neither of our peoples has any hope against what comes." David felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "What exactly are we facing?" One of the smaller dragons, her scales silver like moonlight, answered. "The scouring fleet is not just machines. It is a single intelligence spread across millions of bodies. It learns from every battle, adapts to every weapon, grows stronger with each world it consumes. We have fought them before," added another dragon with golden scales. "Each time we barely escaped. Each time they were harder to defeat." Patricia had been listening carefully. "But you did defeat them before. How?" Seraphine lifted her great head. "By working together. Dragons alone are not enough. No single species has ever defeated the scouring fleet alone. But when different peoples combine their strengths, when they fight as one, there is a chance." The blue dragon finished. David looked around at the dragons floating in the water. Even together there were so few of them. 19 dragons and however many humans we can gather. Is that really enough? "Numbers alone will not win this war," Seraphine said. "The fleet has billions of machine bodies, but they think like machines in patterns we can predict. Your people think differently, chaotically, creatively. That is your strength." The golden dragon moved closer to the research station. "There is more. The old bonds, the connections between dragon and other species. They can be renewed." "What bonds?" Patricia asked. Seraphine's voice grew soft. "Long ago, before the first coming of the machines, dragons learned to share our essence with other beings. Not just communication, but a joining of life force itself. 2 minds, 2 bodies, but one purpose. It made us stronger than we ever were alone." David felt his heart begin to race. "You're talking about some kind of mental link?" "More than that," the silver dragon said. "A sharing of life itself. The bonded human would gain some of our abilities, our long sight, our connection to the forces that shape space and time. The dragon would gain human creativity, your ability to think in ways that break all patterns." Patricia looked skeptical. "What are the risks?" The dragons were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Seraphine answered. "The bonding ritual is dangerous. If the life forces do not merge properly, both beings die. Even if it succeeds, the bond cannot be broken. You would be connected for life. And if we don't try it?" David asked. "Then you will fight the scouring fleet with human weapons and human tactics," the blue dragon said simply. And you will lose, as every other species has lost when they fought alone. David stepped to the edge of the research station's deck, looking down at Seraphine's great form floating in the water. "I'll do it." "David, no," Patricia said quickly. "We don't know enough about this procedure. The risks of not trying are worse," David interrupted. "Seraphine, I've already risked my life to help you." "This isn't different." "It is different," Seraphine said gently. "What I am proposing would change you forever. You would no longer be fully human." David thought about that for a moment. "Would I still be me?" "You would be you, but more," Seraphine replied. "Enhanced, expanded, connected to something larger than yourself. Then I'm still willing." One of the younger dragons, barely 30 feet long with scales like fresh grass, swam closer. "If the human David bonds with Mother Seraphine, others of us could bond with other humans. But we would need volunteers who understand the risks." Patricia looked around at her crew. Several of them stepped forward without hesitation. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Liu, even some of the maintenance staff. "Count me in," said Dr. Thompson. "If it might help save humanity, I'll take the risk." More voices joined in, until nearly half the research station's crew had volunteered. Patricia watched them with pride and fear. "Wait," she said. "Before anyone makes this decision, we need to know more. Seraphine, show us exactly what this scouring fleet can do. Show us what we're really facing." Seraphine's great eye fixed on Patricia. "Very well, but be warned. What you see will give you nightmares for the rest of your life." The dragon's mind reached out and touched all the humans at once. Suddenly they were seeing through the eyes of human soldiers on the outer colonies, experiencing the battle from inside the minds of people who were about to die. David saw starships the size of cities, but dark and hungry looking. They moved wrong, flowing like liquid metal instead of flying like proper ships. When they attacked, they didn't just destroy human vessels, they absorbed them, breaking them down into raw materials to build more of themselves. He saw ground battles where human soldiers fought desperately against machines that adapted their tactics in real time. Every weapon the humans used worked once, maybe twice, before the machines found a counter. The mechanical enemies learned and evolved faster than humans could develop new strategies. Worst of all, he saw what happened to captured humans. They were not killed quickly. Instead, they were studied, their knowledge extracted, their creativity analyzed and cataloged before they were finally consumed. The visions ended, and several of the humans were sick over the side of the station. "That is what comes for your species," Seraphine said sadly. "That is what consumed most of mine." Patricia wiped her mouth, her face pale but determined. "How long do we have to prepare?" The blue dragon lifted his head toward the stars. "I can sense their approach more clearly now that we are together. 6 days, perhaps 7, before their first scouts reach the system. And how long before the main fleet arrives? 10 days. No more." David looked around at the dragons and humans gathered together in the night, so few to stand against such overwhelming darkness. "Then we better get started," he said. Seraphine's great eye met his, and he could see pride there, and hope, and something that might have been love. "Yes, my brave human," she said. "Let us begin." 5 days had passed since the dragons returned from their hiding places. Research Station Delta 7 had become something between a military base and a magical academy. Humans and dragons worked together frantically, sharing knowledge and preparing for the coming battle. David watched from the station's main deck as Dr. Thompson practiced energy manipulation with the silver dragon named Luna. The doctor held his hands out toward the water, concentrating hard. A small ball of blue light formed between his palms, flickered for a moment, then disappeared. "Better," Luna said encouragingly. "You held it for 3 full seconds that time." Nearby, the golden dragon called Sol was teaching a group of engineers how to modify human weapons with dragon technology. Their plasma rifles now glowed with inner fire and hit twice as hard as before. But something was wrong. David could feel it in the way Seraphine moved, in the worried conversations between the older dragons. They were holding something back. That evening, as the stars came out over the ocean, David found Seraphine floating alone away from the station. The other dragons were gathered in a circle, speaking in their singing language about things they didn't want the humans to hear. "What aren't you telling us?" David asked directly. Seraphine's great eye opened and looked at him. "You are too perceptive for your own good, my friend. I've spent weeks learning to read your moods. Something is frightening you, And it's not just the scouring fleet. Seraphine was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her mental voice was heavy with old pain. "The bonding ritual," she said. "I have not told you everything about it." David felt his stomach tighten. "What else?" "To create a true bond, one that will give us the power we need to fight the machines. The dragon and human must share more than just life force. We must share memories, experiences, even pain. Everything that makes us who we are." "That doesn't sound so bad." "David, I am over 3,000 years old. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched friends die. Children grow up and grow old while I remained young. I have felt the agony of my people being destroyed, and the loneliness of centuries trapped beneath the ocean." David began to understand. "You're afraid the bonding will drive me insane. I have lived through wars you cannot imagine, losses that would break most minds. If we bond completely, you will experience all of it as if it happened to you. And I will feel your human emotions, your brief, bright life burning like a candle flame. The intensity might destroy us both." David looked up at the stars, thinking about the visions Seraphine had shown them of the scouring fleet. "What happens if we don't bond completely?" "Then we fail," Seraphine said simply. "A partial bond might give you some dragon abilities, but not enough. The machines will adapt to our combined tactics within hours. We need something they have never encountered before. And a complete bond would give us that? Perhaps. Or it might kill us both in the attempt." David floated in silence for several minutes, watching the lights of the research station reflect on the water. Finally, he made his decision. "I'm willing to try." "David, you do not understand what you are offering. 3,000 years of memories and will make me wiser," David finished. "Seraphine, you've carried all that pain alone for centuries. Maybe it's time you shared it with someone." Before Seraphine could respond, alarms began blaring from the research station. Patricia's voice came over the emergency speakers. "All personnel to stations. We have incoming ships. Unknown configuration." David and Seraphine rushed back to the station where the dragons were already gathering. On the radar screens, 3 small objects were approaching from deep space, moving faster than any human ship. "Scouts," said the blue dragon grimly. "The main fleet is still days away, but they have sent advance units." Patricia turned to Seraphine. "Can we fight them off?" "Perhaps, but not without revealing our capabilities. If even one scout escapes, it will report everything to the main fleet. They will adapt their tactics before they even arrive." David watched the approaching ships on screen. They were getting closer fast. "How long do we have?" 6 hours until they reach scanning range," reported the station's sensor operator. 3 hours until they can start transmitting data back to the fleet. The dragons began speaking rapidly in their own language. David could feel the tension rising. "What are you discussing?" Patricia demanded. Saul, the golden dragon, answered reluctantly. "Whether to attempt the bonding ritual now under emergency conditions. If we wait until the main fleet arrives, it may be too late." "Is that safe?" Dr. Thompson asked. "No," Seraphine said bluntly. "The ritual normally requires days of preparation, meditation, careful alignment of life forces. Doing it quickly under stress increases the chances of failure dramatically." David stepped forward. "But it increases our chances of survival if it works." "David, no," Patricia said. "We need more time to study this, to understand the risks." "We don't have more time," David interrupted. He looked at Seraphine floating in the water beside the station. "I'm ready if you are." "I am not ready," Seraphine admitted.
"I may never be ready to share the darkness I carry."
"But ready or not, it seems we must try." The other dragons moved closer, forming a circle around Seraphine and the research station. Their scales began to glow with soft light as they prepared to lend their strength to the ritual. "Everyone else needs to get to minimum safe distance," Luna warned. "If the bonding fails catastrophically, the energy release could be dangerous." Most of the station's crew moved to the far side of the platform. Only Patricia, Dr. Thompson, and a few volunteers remained close by, ready to attempt their own bondings if David and Seraphine succeeded. David climbed down from the station onto a floating platform that brought him level with Seraphine's great head. Up close, he could see himself reflected in her massive eye, small and fragile looking. "Are you certain?" Seraphine asked one last time. David reached out and placed his hand on her snout. Her scales were warm and smooth like polished stone. "I'm certain." "Then let us begin." The ritual started gently. David felt Seraphine's mind touching his, sharing simple memories. Her first sight of the stars as a young dragon, the feeling of flying between worlds, the pride she felt watching her children learn to hunt among the gas clouds of distant nebulae. David shared his own memories in return. His first day at university, the excitement of discovering new species in Earth's oceans, the wonder he felt when humanity first reached the stars. But as the bonding deepened, darker memories began to flow. David experienced Seraphine's terror during the first attack by the scouring fleet. He felt her desperation as she watched her people fall one by one. The agony of the ritual that hid the survivors nearly killed him with its intensity. In return, Seraphine felt David's human emotions with shocking intensity. Joy that burned like fire, love that was overwhelming in its completeness, hope that refused to die no matter how dark things became. The memories flowed faster now, decades and centuries of experience pouring between them. David lived through wars between ancient civilizations, felt the loneliness of floating in space for years at a time, experienced the slow decay of watching the galaxy grow darker as species after species fell to various catastrophes. Seraphine experienced human childhood, the brief intense years of growing up, the fierce bonds of friendship and family that humans form so quickly. She felt David's determination to help her even when it seemed impossible, the stubborn refusal to abandon someone in need. The flow of memories became a torrent, threatening to wash away their individual identities. David felt himself beginning to dissolve, his human thoughts scattering like leaves in a hurricane of dragon experience. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of being overwhelmed by Seraphine's memories, David began to understand them differently. His human perspective transformed the ancient dragon's experiences, showing her that even the darkest moments had meaning. Her sacrifice to save her people became not just a tragedy, but a victory of love over despair. Her centuries of loneliness became not just suffering, but a testament to endurance. Her survival became proof that hope could outlast any darkness, and Seraphine saw David's brief human life not as a candle flame that would quickly burn out, but as a bright star that made everything around it more beautiful. The bonding reached its climax with a flash of light that illuminated the entire ocean. When it faded, David found himself still standing on the floating platform, but everything had changed. He could feel Seraphine's presence in his mind, not as a separate voice, but as part of himself. Her memories were his memories now, her knowledge his knowledge, and yet he was still David, still human, just more than he had been before. Seraphine's great head moved closer to him. When she spoke, her voice was different, carrying harmonics of human emotion alongside dragon wisdom. "We are one," she said, wonder in her mental voice. "I can feel your thoughts as if they were my own, and yet we are still ourselves." David looked up at the approaching enemy ships on the station's screens. He could sense them now through dragon perception, feel their cold mechanical hunger, but he could also see patterns in their movement that he had never noticed before, weaknesses in their formations. "I can see how to fight them," he said, amazement in his voice. "As can I," Seraphine replied. "Together we see possibilities that neither of us could imagine alone." The other dragons began moving toward the station, ready to attempt their own bondings with human volunteers. Patricia stepped forward, her face determined. "Dr. Thompson, are you still willing?" "More than ever," Thompson replied, moving toward Luna. As the second bonding ritual began, David felt something new stirring in his chest. Not just hope now, but certainty. They could win this fight. Together, humans and dragons could become something the scouring fleet had never encountered, something that could not be defeated.